Yeah. So yesterday we have seen, like we have discussed what is static and what is instance. Suppose if you use static, how it will allocate the memory. Suppose if we use instance, how we have to allocate the memory. Yesterday we have seen. Okay, so let me explain with one example. I'm creating new class, creating as bank transactions. Okay, so before explaining it, so we have to discuss types of methods. Okay, before like going to this method. Okay, so first we will discuss types of methods, and before that we have to discuss again static and instance. Okay, let me create it as types of methods only. So let me declare these three variables. And also let me write some methods. So multiplication, division, and modular division. Okay, these are the common operations generally. We perform in the calculations. Okay, so here, so whatever we declare without static keyword, these comes under instance. Okay, so suppose if you want to access this method, these methods are these variables, or if you want to execute these methods, or if you want to access this data to your main method, you have to create instance for your class. So instance is nothing but object. You have to allocate memory for these methods and variables, okay, in your main method. So why we have to allocate the memory? Okay, why we have to allocate the memory for these methods and variables? Okay, so your compiler doesn't know, okay, whether you use this data or not. By default, it doesn't know. Okay, so when you use static, it knows that, okay, in class loading time, class file loading time, memory will be allocated, so I can give access to print or to call these methods. When you don't use static, so that time your compiler doesn't know whether you create the memory or not. So that is the reason you cannot directly print or call these instance variables. Okay, if you don't specify static, which means instance. Instance means whenever you allocate memory, that time only memory will be allocated for this instance type of methods or variables. Okay, so that is the reason. So when we are allocating the memory for our class instance variables, okay, so that declaration we call it as creating the instance. Okay, and also you cannot call addition method directly like this. Okay, but if you use any static, static C equals to 30. Static int C. Okay, if you use static before your declaration, before using your data type and variable, if you use static, which means so memory will be allocated by JVM. You no need to allocate. So why these types? To save the memory. First of all, basically it is to save the memory occupation. Okay, we write a number of methods and when like we declare a number of variables. All we use or not. Okay, it doesn't know. JVM doesn't know, and your compiler doesn't know. So we have to specify. Okay, these are the mandatory things. So you create memory for it. So for the remaining things, whenever I require, I will allocate the memory. Like that, we have to specify. So when you use static, so you can directly access that static into your methods. Okay. So here main method also static. Main method also static. So for this, memory will be automatically allocated by your JVM, and this will be automatically called. So if you want to call a method, so you have to specify that method. But in Java, so by default, your JVM look for the main method, it will automatically execute. Okay. So now if I write some static method, static void display, some display method. So here I want to display A, B, C values. Okay. So similarly, here I want to display A, B, C values. So in static method also, so when you try to call instance variables, it is not allowing. Why? So while loading your class, this display method also, it will allocate the memory in the backend. While allocating inside whatever you write, for those also, it will check for the memory is available or not. But coming to these two, memory is still not allocated. For this, memory is allocated. So when you call display method, okay, so it will give the access because it is a static. So your main method will give you the access. Suppose if you try to call display method, it will give you the access. But coming to the data you have inside the display method, still this data, you don't have the memory location. So that is the reason. So whatever you have, whatever instance variables you have, those you cannot directly access into static methods. Okay, instance variables or instance methods, you cannot directly access with the help of, you cannot directly access into static methods. Okay, so coming to instance methods and instance data. Okay, so for instance variables, you can directly access into instance method. So why we can access instance variables into instance methods? So your compiler knows if you want to like execute this method, okay, you will create instance, right? Okay, so in that case, when you create the instance, when you allocate the memory for your class, it automatically allocates for your instance variables also. You won't create memory separately for each variable or each method. At a time, you will create the memory for all your instance data. So that time, while creating the memory for your method, it already knows that for variables also memory will be allocated. So that is the reason it is giving the access to direct access to your instance methods, which means, so instance to instance, you can give direct access. So can I print static data into instance method? Yes, you can print static data directly into instance method because memory is already available. So you can directly access. Okay, while executing this, you have to allocate the memory. So that time it will allocate memory for your instance allocate memory for A and B values. Those will be printed, and also this memory is already available. It is created by JVM. So this is also will be accessed in the instance method. So static you can access in both instance methods and static methods. So that is the reason you are able to access in the static main method. So main method is also a static. Suppose if you remove static, again you will get sorry. So if you remove static here, again you will get the error for C. See. Okay, so instance data you can access in the instance methods. Static data you can access in both instance methods and static methods. It is a very important rule. Okay, so if you want to access instance data into static methods, you have to allocate the memory. For suppose, if I want to print A and B values, and also if I want to call the addition method, so all these two are, again, these two are instance method and instance variable. This is instance variable and this is instance method. So if you want to call these in static, what you have to do? You have to allocate the memory. So you have allocated the memory. Give some reference to it. Okay, suppose this is the value. When you use this, some memory will be allocated. All the data will be stored into that memory location. Okay, all the data is stored into. Suppose if you create only one instance, so this memory will be allocated like this. Okay, so here we declared it as like this. Okay, now you can access this data, instance data, whatever the memory you created, the data is stored into this memory location, right? That you can access with the variable. Okay, whatever the variable you are using, that variable you can use. But what type of data we created? So this entire data you are representing with some name, right? This entire code you are representing with some name, right? What is that name? What are the name you have provided to class? That names is comes under this type of data you created. Okay. So while storing also you have to give that name because you created this type of data only. So that is the reason all the non-primitive data types, okay, all the classes, interfaces, and enums comes under non-primitive data types. This is also data type. You are creating one data type that is stored somewhere. So to give the name to that memory location, so type must be same. Okay, the variable type must be, the data type must be same as you created. So now you can access that data with the help of the reference variable, memory reference variable, or object reference variable. So whatever we create, this entire thing is a object. Okay, so whatever the name we are giving, that we call it as object reference variable. Object reference variable. This one. Okay. So here again, so when you create inside a main method, which means it is a local variable, right? Whatever we create inside the main block, whatever we create inside the main block, that comes under local variable. This calc you cannot access outside the main method. Suppose if you want to use here, you cannot use because it is declared inside the main method. So this comes under local variable. Again, this memory, whenever main method is executed, that time it will be allocated. So this will be called, once done with this execution, it will this calc will be erased. So if you want to if you try to call display method, it cannot, you cannot use this local variable to call a and b into some other method, because the scope of this variable is up to this main method only. You cannot access outside. Again, if you want to call a and b value, so you have to create a separate memory. So this time again one more memory will be allocated in the backend. One more object will be allocated in the backend, like this. Okay. So coming to your instance methods, you no need to like create the local variable to access that memory, because once it is allocated, okay, so by default it directly uses that object reference. Suppose if you create in the main method, when you call into this method, by default it uses this reference only in the main method. Suppose if you call division method here, okay, it is a instance method. So what you have to do, so you have to specify the memory reference. So when you call division method, so these two, how we are accessing these two, we are accessing because of memory is allocated. Okay, that memory is available in this calc location. So that is the reason it is providing the direct access. No need to specify calc A, calc dot B. By default, we have one special keyword. This keyword, okay, it works in the backend. Okay, what is this keyword? I will explain later. So by default, one keyword will be worked along with the instance variables. But again, this keyword we cannot use in the static methods. Okay, so what is this keyword? I will explain later. Okay, so it is only applicable for your instance methods. Okay, here to access A and B values, no reference is required, but in static methods, reference is required. Why reference is required? Then only your compiler understand that. So memory is allocated, and from that memory only you are accessing that data. Like that, it will assume and it will not throw any error, your compiler. Okay, for instance methods, your compiler don't throw any error. It doesn't throw any error, so it will give the direct access. Okay, the basic rule is, if you have instance data, that you can directly access in the instance methods. If you have static data, that you can access directly into both instance methods and static methods. And coming to instance data, if you want to access in the static method, you have to allocate the memory with that reference only you can access. Okay, these 4 rules we have to keep in mind. Okay, every time. So whenever you try to access some data, okay, how to access, you have to know. Okay, so instance data and static data, how we can access, that you have to know. Okay, so to differentiate, generally to differentiate static data and instance data, to identify static data and instance data, so what we have to do is, so whenever you are accessing static data, so you have to specify with your class name. Okay, so which means whenever we are seeing the code, okay, we can identify that, okay, this is a static variable. Suppose same thing if you are trying to print here. Okay, among these three, what is static variable and what is instance variable? You will confuse, right? So when we are accessing static data or static methods, so we must use class name. So suppose if it is in the same class, generally we don't use, but if we are accessing outside the class, so generally we use the class name. So here also class name. Okay, if you are accessing display method, it is a static method, access with the class name. Coming to non-static, okay, you will allocate the memory with that reference you will do. But here, that reference how we can access, we cannot access directly, right? So here we can use this keyword. Okay, what is this? I will explain. Okay, if you write your program like this, okay, this and these class names if you use for static and instances, okay, so you will understand it better. If somebody wants to go through your code, they can understand easily. Okay, it is an instance variable. That is the reason they are using this keyword like that. Okay, so let me put this keyword. So this keyword is nothing but, so when we create a object, when we create an instance like this, to represent that memory location, okay, so we are using this variable, right? To represent this memory location, we are using this reference variable. Okay, without using reference variable also, we can access that memory. So that is nothing but this keyword. Okay, so without reference, how we can access it? Using this keyword we can access. Okay, this means some current object. Okay, now the current object is in the execution, this one. Okay, so when you call calc.a from here, that is fine. So when you call calc addition, so first it will go to addition method. From here, if it wants to access a and b values, it uses this keyword. Okay, you can use this keyword. If you specify without this keyword also in the backend, it works as a this.a in the instance. So let me put it for all the. Okay, so coming to static methods. Okay, static methods, we cannot use this keyword in the static methods. Why? Why this keyword? So we can directly execute the static method, right? Suppose if you are not calling all this data, okay, you are calling only display method. It will give you the access. Why? It is a static method. But while executing, if you don't create any object, if you are directly trying to access with this keyword, okay, or directly printing, this memory is not allocated. So this also won't work, right? Whenever memory is allocated, that time only this keyword will be allocated. When you create memory in the backend, that time this will be used. But if you are not creating any memory, suppose if you create the like memory with static keyword, okay, this keyword it won't represent this static memory location. Only this instance memory location only it will represent. It cannot access the static memory. So that is the reason. So you cannot use this keyword inside the static methods. You cannot use this keyword inside the static methods. So in main method also you cannot use, even though you create the memory location. So now memory is available, but still you are unable to access. Why? So your compiler doesn't know whether you create or not. So by default it is restricting. Okay, so creating or not, that your option. But compiler, okay, even though you create, your compiler it won't allow you to access or use this keyword. Okay, whether you use or not use, okay, because that is optional, right? Creating the memory location. So by default it restricts. Okay, this keyword you cannot use in the static methods. Suppose if you are trying to call with the this keyword, those you cannot use in any static method. Okay, so let me execute this program now. Created memory, printing a value, addition method, printing c value, display method, division method. So when I call addition method, okay, it will print a plus b. First it prints a value, then a plus b value, c value it will print. When you call display, it prints all the abc value. When you call division, division method will be executed, and also abc values will be printed. So let me run it. See, so first a value, this is a plus b value, then it is printing the c value. When you call display method, it is printing abc values. When you call division method, okay, first it is dividing. So when you use division, okay, a by b, 10 by 20, okay, it will become 0.2, right? So by default it gives the 0 quotient. So again it is printing 10, 20, 30, okay, abc values. Okay, so now, so any doubt in instance and static, is it clear? Okay, so without understanding it, you cannot understand other examples and other topics. Okay, you must be clear in these topics. What is instance and what is static? So now, when you perform addition, okay, so let me use the calculator example only. So let me create it as a new calculator or calculator 2. Or let me do one thing, arithmetic operations. So whatever the operations we are performing, those are arithmetic operations. Let me create the name as arithmetic operations. Okay, so same data I will copy from here. So what I do is, so I don't want to use some static data. I want to go with the instance data. I just do the operation, whatever I required. So display method also I'm removing here. Okay, I will create the object and I will call one by one method. For ed identification of output, what I put is just I put the operation names. Okay, addition. Okay, the method name we call it as operation name or logic name. So here, this is subtraction. Similarly, you have multiplication and division and modular division. Okay, so when I call addition method, okay, so it prints addition of two numbers. When I call subtraction of two numbers, it will be called. Okay, similarly, multiplication, division, and you have modular division. These methods you written in your class. Okay, those are arithmetic operations. So we are just using arithmetic operators. So let me execute it. Wait. So we have main method, right? Okay. So why it is executing other class? Oh, okay. So here the object you created. What is the object type here? Types of methods. For types of methods class, we created object here. Okay. So if you want to allocate memory for your instance data, so you have to use your class name, not other class. So other class also we can use into our class. That is a separate topic. Okay. When you run it, see values are printing, right? So now, so here, yeah. So here, whenever you call addition method, it is always printing 30. Okay. Whenever I call subtraction method, it is always printing -10. Okay, it is always using this instance data. Okay, but I want to change, I want to pass some other values to my methods. I don't want to use every time these static values. Okay, hard coded values. When you are creating some logic, that should be applicable for all your data. Okay, so here whenever I use, it is only accessing 10 and 20. So if I want to perform some 100 plus 100, then how I can use this logic? Okay, can I use this logic? When I use this addition logic for 100 plus 100, it will print 30 because you are hard coded. Okay, whatever the values you defined here, those you have assigned, already initialized. Then how can I pass the data to my method? Okay, how can I pass my data, whatever I require? Suppose if I want to perform addition of 10 and 20, okay, you should do that 10 plus 20. If I want to perform 100 plus 100, it has to do 100 plus 100, okay, with this logic. So how I can pass this data, whatever the required data, how I can pass? So generally data we can pass in two ways. Okay. So one is from in runtime, whenever your program is executing. So that time you can pass the data. That time you can pass the data, or you have to declare like this through local variables or global variables. Okay. So here first we see the hard coded values. Hard coded values. How we can pass the data. So same this data you can copy here. So here I will remove this keyword. Okay, here these two are local variables. Okay, it will perform only addition operation again with 10 and 20. 10 and 20. 10 and 20 only it will be printed. So now my requirement is whatever the values I pass. Now it is 10, 20. In future, I may calculate 100 plus 100, 1000 plus 1000, some other big values I want to calculate. Then how I can pass my data to my method, okay, without like hard coding like this. So we have one more option, okay, instead of declaring the values, initializing the values like this, okay, we can pass the data without initializing the value. But here, if you want to use that data, you have to assign some data to it. If you want to perform some operation on that data for local variables, you have to assign the value. But here still we didn't assign. How can I assign? How can I pass my required data to my method? Okay, instead of using this local variable here, how you can use is in the method parenthesis block, you can declare in method parenthesis block, you can declare variables like this. So now it is not giving any error. Okay, these are also local variables only. Suppose if you want to access A and B, these will not be available here. Okay, so again you have to declare these local variables into that particular method. Okay, this is also local variables. Why these local variables I will explain later. Okay. Pass A and B values. So even though you are passing values while calling this method, again you have to pass the data. How I can pass? Suppose I have int A equals to 10, int B equals to 20. So you can pass A and B values through this method. Okay, when you call addition, so 30 will be printed. 30 will be printed. So again, it is asking to pass the values. So through the main method, you can pass the values. See. Through the main method, you can pass the values. These two variables you are passing. So instead of again creating data to your local variables, creating some memory into method area, instead of it, what you can do is no need to pass the values like this, no need to pass the values through variables. You can directly pass the data here like this. So here For multiplication subtraction, what I do is 100 and 50 or minus some 25. For multiplication, so 5 and 5. For division, I'll do 100, 10 or 2. Modular division, some 61, 30. Okay, whatever the data you want to pass, okay, that data you pass through the parameters. Okay, so these we call it as parameters, are nothing but local variables. These we call it as arguments. Okay, this data will be, whenever you call this method, it will go to this method, right, to execute. So that time, this data will be, whatever the order you are passing, that data will be assigned to your parameters. So 10 will be assigned to A and 20 will be assigned to B. Okay, so like this, whatever the values you want to pass, that data you can pass. Suppose if I want to perform 100 and 100, simply I will pass 100 and 100. 100 plus 100, if I want to perform, just I pass the 100 and 100. Again, this type of notation also hard-coded value. Okay, in runtime, if you want to pass, we have another notation. While program execution, if you want to pass, so we have some other approach that I will explain later. That is not required now. Okay, so here you can pass the data directly to your methods. Okay, so this one, suppose let me create one more method, void display method. So here in display method, let me create two more variables, int a. I just declaring int b. Okay, here if I pass a and b values, okay, so here also I want to display a and b. I want to print a and b. So when I call display method, okay, we have to pass 10 and 20, right? Okay, when I pass 10, 20, okay, it prints 10 and 20. Okay, so a value, b value. This is b, this is a value. A value is printing 20 and b value is printing, a value is printing 10, b value is printing 20. So let me put a and b values, whatever I declared in global, put 40 and 50. 40 and 50. So when I run this display method, again, it will print 10 and 20. So you have a option to create duplicate names for your local variables. So whatever the data you defined here, okay, for this data, you can create. So the same way, whatever the variables you created, whatever the names you used into global variables, with the same names you can create the variables inside the methods. Because these are local, it can differentiate. Okay, it is global and it is local. But coming to display method, I want to display a and b values of global variables here. How I can display? So here the problem is, whenever you have duplicate names for both global and local variables, in the methods by default, it gives the preference to your local variables. So here, how it is taking as, so this int a and int b, it is feeling like these are declared inside these methods. So there is no difference. See, so these are local variables only. Okay, these are local variables only. These two are local variables only. Suppose if you write int a and int b, here declaration part only, you will get the error. Why? You cannot use duplicate names for your local variables. See, so you cannot again declare with the same name. Once you already declared, again you cannot declare. Okay, so this both the notation is same. Suppose if you are writing a equals to a, okay, are you getting error? No, right? So here by default it is taking the a and b values of local variables. A and b values of local variables. Then how I can access my global variables? So whenever you have the duplicate names for global variables and local variables, so we must specify class name to represent, sorry, whenever you have global variables, we must specify, for instance variables, we must specify this keyword, this keyword. Okay, suppose if you want to print this local variables, okay, no need to specify anything. No need to specify anything. This is A and this is B. Okay, suppose if you have some static data. So specify with class name. Do not accept. So you can directly print like this because there is no duplicate name. But to identify it, you have to use the class name. Okay, this is the notation you have to follow. When you are performing operation, you need to specify, okay, this is the variable, is an instance variable. These are the local variables. These are the static variables. So technically we call it as class variable also. Class variable. So this is the C value. So now if you print, the proper values will be printed. Local variable values and also instance A, instance B, instance B, and static C. C. AB value is printed, instance AB and instance C also is printed. Suppose let me make it as 60 to differentiate. Okay, so I don't want to assign any value to my global variables. What it will print? For local variables, if you don't assign any value, you will get error. But global variables, you will not get any error. You are getting 0. Why it is getting 0? That I will explain later. Okay. So as of now, so you already understand the notation of your data, how you have to represent the data while you are performing. Okay. So now, if you observe here, we have method with some data, some runtime data. Okay. So without runtime data also, you can create some method. Global data. So global data, I'm printing this. when you call global data, so global variables values will be printed. Okay, so again, display method. Okay, these are instance methods only. Okay, when you call global data is printing. Okay, instead of instance, we use global A, global B, global C. So you have methods. You have methods with runtime data. Runtime, the data is passing. Without runtime, also you are passing. So once method is executed, okay, once this method is executed, the result value if you want, suppose what I have to do is addition of numbers, I have one result, right? With that result, I want to perform multiplication with 5. Multiplication with 5. So with this method, okay, what you are getting? So 200 you are getting, right? So 200 into 5 I want to do. So you already have the multiplication method. Okay, you need to pass. You need to pass the result of addition and also and also 5. Okay, so suppose the result if you want to store into some integer data, some int addition result, you can write like this, and that value you can pass it to your method like this. But here, when I call this addition method, okay, the result should be stored somewhere, right? The result should be stored somewhere. Then only I can access or I can give the name to that memory location. But here, it is not allocating any memory. So void means it is a empty. Don't create the memory for this operation. Just execute it. Do not create any memory. In method area, memory will be allocated and it will be executed. But after execution, it will not allocate any memory for your result. Suppose if I want this result to store to somewhere, it will not allocate. It will not allocate. Then how I can store my result into some memory location? Okay, so if you want to allocate the memory, how we are using for variables? Similarly, for methods also we have to use the same notation, but here to represent the result, we have to use return keyword, return A plus B. So when you use like this, so it will execute the statement. After execution, okay, the result will be stored into this particular memory location with name addition. When you call addition method, along with executing this operation, it will also store the result into some memory location. That memory location you are giving the name as addition. Okay, here when I call this addition method, it is returning the value, right? That if you want to store, you can store into some other variable. Suppose you can do like this, right? Int a equals to 100. Int b equals to a. This is possible, right? Again, a value we are storing into b. So similarly, so whatever the value result is stored with name addition, that data we are just assigning to one more variable. Okay, instead of it, okay, I don't want to waste memory to declare for this result variable. In that case, you can directly use this name inside here. So now 200 will be passed to method through this method. 205 will be passed to this multiplication because the result of addition is 200 and you are passing 5. Okay, when you run it, see you are getting 1000, 200 into 5. 1000 you are getting the result. Okay, so if you want to store the result, you have to use you have to allocate memory for that value, and using return keyword, that value can be stored into that memory location. And by default, name will be given as that, for that memory location, name will be given as method name. Okay. So here I want to return, I want to, through the method, I want to store my value into some location. Okay, so you need to use this notation. So basically, so these methods, okay, so if you observe here, you are passing the data through parameters, right? And also you are passing the data and you are storing the result. Without passing the data also, you are able to create the method. And we have one more type. I don't want to pass any data. Okay, some store data, store global data. I don't want to pass any data, but still I want to store the data into some memory location. Okay, suppose I have int some a equals to 2000. Okay, 2000. So this a value cannot be accessed outside of this method, right? Then what I have to do? So this data, if you want, you can store with this, with your method name, and that you can access whenever you require. So in that case, you are not passing any data to your method. Okay, just you can use return and a. So here you can use that type of that data. So now, if I want to perform operation with this local variable data, okay, suppose let me perform modular division. Modular division dot, sorry, modular division. Here I need to pass two values, right? So one value I will use store global data. So which means you will get, how much you will get? 2000. Arithmetic operations dot store global data 2000. So b value you can pass it like some 6. So reminder you can see. So it is a method, you must enclose with the, not enclose, you must specify with the, you must end with the parenthesis. So if you have any parameters to that method, you have to pass the parameters. Data if you have to pass. See, modular division also you are getting. Remainder you are getting 2. Okay. So in these ways we can write the methods. Okay. So let me just explain the methods, types of methods. Types of methods. So we already discussed types of data. Okay. So instance, static, local we discussed. Okay. Types of methods also we have instance and static, right? We are writing both instance and static, right? Here we are writing instance and static. Let me make it as static here. Okay, when you use static, that can be accessed through both, that can be accessed through both object and class name, both object reference and class name. So here, when you create some reference using which you can access this object data along with the static memory data. Okay, both can be accessed through object. So to differentiate, generally we use class name. Okay, it is also, so earlier it is also giving the warning. Okay, do not use object. The static method global from the type arithmetic operations should be accessed in a static way. What is the static way? Specifying the class name is a static way. Okay, so we are writing static methods and not in the instance methods. Again, these static methods and instance methods are 4 categories. So what are those categories? Okay, we are writing method with, so first we are writing method without parameters, which means runtime data. Without return, which means you are not storing the result. Example. So this is the global data example. You are not passing any parameters, any data, and also you are not storing any result. Just you are using it for display purpose. Okay. So again, we have method with parameters. With parameters, you are passing the runtime data. And without return, you are not storing the result. Okay. For example, if you take modular division, you are passing the data, which means with parameters, but you are not storing the result. Okay. So method with parameter and with return, you are storing the result. Okay. So here addition method, you have with parameters you have, and also you are storing the data. Okay. So again, method without parameters. Without parameters. Okay. So whenever no runtime data, no runtime data. Without parameters, but still you are storing the result with return. Okay. So here, if you take store global data, there is no parameters, but still you are storing the data, some data. Okay, these are the categories of methods we have. You can write your methods for both instance and static. For both instance and static, you can write the methods in these formats, in these 4 categories. Method with parameters, method with parameters with return, method with parameters without return, method without parameters with return, method without parameter without return. Okay, you can write your methods in these 4 formats. So we already discussed these methods, how to write those, right? Okay, are you getting or not? How we write these methods, I have defined here. Okay, so we cannot create the local methods. So method inside a method, I mean, inside a method, you cannot create one more method. Local variable, it is possible, but you cannot create the method. So let me try to create void some display again. Am I able to create? This is not possible. Okay, so let me take one example, and also for instance, okay, we are using this keyword. For static, we are using class name, for local direct access. Okay, so suppose here I have display method, right? So here what I do, I'm creating one more method. So why get, I want to get a value, get a. So get B. And get C. I have three methods. Get C. Get A, get B, and get C. So to get the value A, you can use this keyword. Okay, this dot A means global variable. You will get this dot A. If you want to return, or if you want to, so why it is storing? Okay, so this you have to use, or whenever you are getting the data into method, either you have to use it for operation, or you have to use it for storing to somewhere, some location. So this value I will store with get a name. So this is int. Similarly, okay, I want to return B here when I call get method. Get method B, when I call, it has to return, I have to get C. Okay, so here if you want to get one method into another method, okay, if you want to get one method value into another method, so how we are getting into the main method, you can do that, right? So here in static method, you cannot use this keyword, okay? But if you want to call these methods, again you have some reference, right? Okay, instance to instance, it is a direct access. Suppose if I want to call, okay, so here again, display global data, I'm creating one more method, display global data. Okay, you can call get a method instead of printing this dot a. Get a method you can call. Okay, to represent instance and static, you can use this. So this is a static, C is a static variable, right? So static to static, it is a direct access. Let me make it as static method. Okay, whenever you are using static, no need to use this keyword. So you have to use the class name for your to represent the static data. Okay, so here I use get B. Use get B. So for accessing C, you have get C method. Instead of this, you can use get C. So inside the method, again, you can call the method, but you cannot create the method. Okay, in static and instance also, you can create the, or you can access the other methods. You cannot call. Okay, if you run it, yeah, it is displaying addition, multiply, ABC value it has to display. Where are these? So global A, global B, and again, this method you have to call into the main method, then only it will process. Then only it will process. So whatever you write outside the main method, that again you have to call. Huge logics you can call, you can write into some other methods. That name you have to call to process that logic. Okay, you can access one method inside another method. It can be instance or static. Okay, so instance methods you cannot directly access into static methods. You have to allocate the memory again. But for instance to static or static to instance, you can directly access. Okay, the only difference is memory allocation. Okay, your compiler restricts by default. Once you allocate memory, then you can access. But instance methods, it already knows. If you call the instance method, so we have to definitely allocate the memory. So that time it will understand that. So to call this, they will compulsory allocate the memory. So we can give the access like that. It will things and it will give the access. But static, it always permits. Okay, it will check all are static or not. Okay, so let me create one example. There you will understand what is the importance of static and instance. What is the importance of static and instance? Okay, so I'm creating one bank transactions example. Bank transaction. Here you will understand the importance of what is the use of static and instance. Okay. So in bank transactions, generally what we do, deposit we'll do, right? Deposit. So let me write it as a void. And also withdraw. Okay, sometimes we will check the balance also, right? So display balance. Or you can, yeah, display balance is fine. Check balance or display balance. Check balance. So generally these operations we have to perform. So let me take deposit method. Suppose int balance equals to some 1 lakh you have. 1 lakh balance you have. So when you deposit, what it has to do? Your balance should be increased, right? Balance equals to your existing balance, plus whatever the amount you deposit. Okay, so that amount I'm passing it as a through parameters. Okay, deposit amount that will be added to your balance, right? So now this value will be replaced with this new value. Okay, this is deposit. I want to withdraw my amount. From where I need to withdraw? From my balance only I have to withdraw, right? Suppose if you declare it as a local variable, can you access that local variable outside of deposit or inside of withdrawal method? Or if you want to check the balance, can you access that balance into check balance method? We cannot access, right? So if you want to access across all your methods, you can declare this as a global variable. Okay, as per our standards, so use this keyword to represent global and local. If I want to display the balance, okay, just to write print statement. So here, balance in your account. So here you can display the balance variable. Again, I want to withdraw some money. So in withdraw case, what we have to do? So from your balance, you have to deduct that amount. What are the amount you are withdrawing? So int withdrawal amount. That you have to deduct. So from your balance, it will the withdrawal amount will be deducted. The remaining amount after performing this operation, remaining amount will be assigned to your balance. Okay, so these are the operations. Suppose let me create object for it. Bank transactions. Okay, so from like suppose if you are depositing from some branch or some machine. Okay, some branch, Amirpet branch. Amirpet branch, new bank transactions. So you are depositing the money. Suppose first I will check my balance. Check balance. So by default, what is the amount? This is let me put it as 1 lakh. Okay, it will display my balance, right? So it is printing as 1 lakh. I want to deposit some amount. Okay, I want to deposit some 10,000. Yeah. Okay, 10,000 I want to deposit. Or let me to show the difference. Some 2,500 I want to deposit. Okay, after depositing, if I check my balance, how much is my balance? 1 lakh 2,500. Right. So now I went to some other location. I went to some other location. So other location, if you go to some LB Nagar. Okay, from there you are withdrawing the money. Withdraw money. I want to withdraw some 5,000 or again 2,500. Okay, whatever I deposited, I want to withdraw it. Okay, after withdrawal, if I check my balance, how much it should be? It should be again 1 lakh only, right? Okay, so let me run it. See, when I deposit, my balance is 1 lakh. Sorry, initially my balance is 1 lakh. When I deposited the amount, okay, that time 1 lakh 2,500. So here I'm withdrawing 2,500. Okay, here withdrawal. Okay, I'm withdrawing 2,500. But when I call my, okay, so here not Amirpet branch, LB Nagar branch, I have to use. Okay, so when I display my balance after withdrawing, so instead of showing 1 lakh, it is showing the 97,500. Okay, so here the difference is, so let me explain it diagrammatically, you will understand it better. So you have Amirpet branch and also you have LB Nagar branch. Okay, when you create the memory in backend, when you use this notation in backend, two separate memory locations will be allocated. So by default, these values will be fetched. Okay, first it is fetched the balance, and here also it is fetching the balance. Okay, so as of now, I want, okay, let it be. So this is the Amirpet branch. So this is LB Nagar branch. So when you perform operation, suppose if you are depositing balance 2,500, this balance will become 1 lakh 2,500, right? So this will be removed and balance will be replaced with 1 lakh 2,500. Okay, so even though it is replaces the balance as 2,05,000, the main value will not change. So that is the main difference with the instance. When you create the new instance in the backend, again it won't take the new value. Okay, so for that it is already created a separate memory where it is showing. Again, when you create the new variable, again it starts from here. It checks what is the value of balance. So that balance will be stored into the other memory location you are representing with some Amirpet branch or LB Nagar branch. So now when you withdraw money, so your balance become 97,500. You are withdrawing money. 2,500 you are withdrawing. So this become 97,500. So here you are performing deposit 2,500. Here you are withdrawing withdraw 2,500. Both are two different instances. Okay, so this is a mismatch, right? As per our real world, this is mismatch, right? It should not happen like this. Wherever I perform, okay, it should affect to my balance. From which branch, from wherever the branch I perform, it should affect to my main balance. So in that case, how we can store this balance into common memory location for these two objects. Okay, we have one more option, right, to store into the common memory. Okay, we have, if we use static, what happens? So this balance will be stored into the static memory location. Okay, when you perform deposit operation from this instance, this will be performed here. This will be performed here. Still you are performing through this object only, this object reference only. So now balance will become 10,000, sorry, 1,02,500. Okay, so it won't create this particular variable inside the object. Okay, when you perform withdraw operation, it performs here. Okay, it will become 1 lakh again. So now if you perform here, it will become 1 lakh. So like this, you have to choose the variable. Okay, which variable you want, instance, static. Okay, so based on the data, based on your requirement, you have to choose the type of variable. Suppose after making static, okay, see the result, whether we are getting proper result or not. See, now I'm getting proper result, right? So let me, for understanding purpose, let me add 5,000, deposit as 5,000. So initially, so my balance will increases to 1,05,000. After that, withdrawal 2,500, it has to display 1,02,500. Okay, now when you use static, so in that case, you are getting the proper result. Okay, here the warning is, okay, this is the static variable. Instead of using this keyword, use the static. Okay. Here also, it is not showing any warning, but still, if you follow, this notation we can easily understand. Okay, so here we have some rules, right? For deposit, we'll have some rules. Okay, some amount. We have limits, daily limits. Suppose if you want to deposit 2 lakhs daily limit, 10 lakhs daily limit, okay, based on the account. Okay, we have some rules, right? Suppose if you want to put some conditions. Suppose here I have 1 lakh 5,000 balance. Okay, if I want to withdraw 1 lakh 25,000, okay, it should not allow, right? Okay, it should not allow. But coming to when I running, it is allowing and also it is showing the minus 20,000 balance. In that case, everyone will withdraw more than their balance. Okay, so bank will lose their money. So if you want to restrict some operation, or if you want to check the condition, if you want to check your balance before performing the operation, or if you want to deposit, so before depositing, whether it is meeting the condition or not, if you want to check, you can use the conditional statement. Suppose here, when I am withdrawing amount, okay, so before performing that operation, if you want to check if my balance amount is greater than my withdrawal amount, then give the access to withdraw. Otherwise, if you don't have the sufficient balance, you can print the statement to the user. Yeah, you don't have the sufficient balance, insufficient balance. Okay, if I run it, you will get insufficient balance. Okay, you are unable to withdraw 1,25,000. It is also showing your balance is only 1,05,000. Insufficient balance. Coming to deposit, based on the account we can have some limits, right? So generally we have savings account, current account, like that, retail account, like that. We'll have different accounts, right? Suppose if you want to put the conditions, if my deposit amount, generally for savings account, I think 2 lakhs, I think, less than 2 lakhs, lesser than 2 lakhs, or lesser or equals to 2 lakhs, then I will allow you to perform this operation. Else, so print a message, deposit limit exceeds daily limit. Deposit limit exceeds daily limit. Deposit amount exceeds daily limit. Please deposit less than 2 lakhs. You can print the message like this. Suppose if I want to deposit some 5 lakhs, see, deposit amount exceeding the daily limit, just deposit lesser than 2 lakhs. Again, your balance, it is not deposited your account money, insufficient balance when you are trying to withdraw. Okay, so yeah, so if you want to like put more conditions, like so generally if you go to ATM, okay, so when you are trying to perform some transaction, so initially, so it will ask you to select the account, right? What type of account? Then it will ask you to enter the PIN. Okay, then it will ask you to enter the amount, then it will ask you to enter the PIN, then it will give the money, right? So suppose if you want to put the conditions like that, you can use if conditions. If condition you can use. Okay, so methods. So if you want to write more methods, like calculating the interest, so you can write calculate interest. So we'll have some other operations as well in bank transactions. Everything you can write through the methods. Okay, so if you want to put some conditions, use conditional statements. Okay, so are you clear on this example or any doubts? Let me stop recording.
Clear.
Let me stop recording.